Hey guys, welcome to BP, the Bible Perspective. I thank God for slavery, says Representative Kimberly Daniels. I say she's thanking the wrong God. Now, before we unpack this, please like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome. I want to unpack a video that has resurfaced of Florida Representative Kimberly Daniels, in which she states that she thanks God for slavery. Now, there's three statements I want to unpack. I'm going to play the video in a moment. The reason why this video has surfaced is it's about 15 years old, and I remember that video back 15 years ago. I thought it was asinine then. But the reason why it has resurfaced today is because of her close association to the Florida school boards, which says that black people benefited from slavery. And so her political opponents, at least she's accusing some of them, of trying to sabotage her campaign by releasing this video. Now, if it is, it's a good ploy, but I'm not here to really kind of dive into that. But let me play the video, and then I'm going to come back on the other side and unpack it.
I thank God for slavery. I thank God for the crack house. If it wasn't for the crack house, come on somebody, God wouldn't have never been able to use me how he can use me now. And if it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshiping a tree.
Now, if you pay attention, she was in a church. Again, this was 15 years ago. And I think she's a pastor. I think she even calls herself an apostle. Now, before I unpack the video itself, because there are three statements she makes that is asinine. But she made it 15 years ago. Now, she has, in recent days, addressed that video in which she says it was taken out of context. Now, I agree with her. The video was taken out of context and has nothing to do with what is going on with the Florida school board trying to peddle the lie that blacks benefited from slavery. Now, the problem is that she is on the Department of Education, the Florida Department of Education, that was appointed by Commissioner Manny Diaz, and he still stands by that asinine move to say that black people benefited from slavery. Understand, that notion has always been around from racists, bigots, conservatives, white conservatives, that they always try to minimize and lessen the impact of the evil of slavery. Mainly because most of their ancestors were involved in it. That the hard history of what slavery did. Let me read her response, just a small snippet of her response that she put out. She says, slavery as it existed was cruel, inhumane, and an oppressive institution that had its roots in the United States, including the Kingsley plantation, and was not a benefit to African Americans. Now, that's the statement that the Florida School Board is adopting. In other words, this is going to be a policy that's going to be taught in Florida schools. This is how they're going to teach slavery. Now, the reason why I said that is because the Kingsley plantations is the slave plantation in the district in which she served. And the reason why a lot of racists, white people, conservative, try to minimize, they don't want to talk about even the harsh reality that still exists, this Kingsley plantation. That's a reminder of the brutality and the evils of slavery. So I agree with her that the statements does not reflect her position today. And when she preached that message 10 years ago, I do understand where she was coming from. I just disagree with making the statements, and I'm going to unpack them in a minute because they were asinine no matter how you look at it. But oftentimes when Christians, and even though she's a Democrat, she still comes from a conservative point of view where her Christianity is concerned. And as I said, they've been peddling this notion for years. So when she says that, I thank God for slavery, though I understand what she's saying, it is still misguided. So let me replay the video, and I'm gonna unpack it statement by statement.
I thank God for slavery.
So when she makes this statement here, I thank God for slavery, you're thanking the wrong God. You're giving glory to the wrong thing. Slavery wasn't the good. And this notion that God uses these bad things to purify you, correct you, bring you, mold you. That's not what evil does. It is the grace of God. So you're giving glory to the wrong thing. Why give glory to slavery? Why wouldn't you give the glory to God who rescued us from slavery? Why wouldn't you give glory to God who preserved us in slavery? It wasn't the slavery that is the entity of good or the instrument of good.
I thank God for the crack house. If it wasn't for the crack house, come on somebody, God wouldn't have never been able to use me how he can use me now.
Again, the crack house is not the instrument of good, because if it were, look at all of the millions who have died as a result of a crack house. Look how many people's lives have been destroyed because of the crack house. That's not the instrument of good. Again, you're giving glory to the wrong thing. And you should be giving glory to God who rescued you, who saved you from the crack house.
And if it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshiping a tree.
Now, that is the most asinine statement that she made, because the insinuation is that that people in Africa, again, this is a bigoted, racist ideology that they peddle. When you think about Africa, you think about, and they used to call it the dark continent. Why? Because the people were dark, the people were savage. And that's what she's peddling. But let's explore this for a moment. Let's say that there was no slavery. Let's say that the savages were able to ward off the white man with their spears, right? Well, would you be worshiping a tree today? Well, how about this? How about, in reality, those Africans who sold their fellow Africans into slavery? Let's look at them today. Are they worshiping the tree today? Did they not grow? So when you say you might be in Africa today worshiping the tree, you're insulting an entire continent. And a continent that has 55 distinct nations. A continent of 55 distinct nationalities. And so you know, uh, all Africans are not the same. They're different people. And when you say you might be in Africa today worshiping a tree. First of all, what tree? Okay, that's petty. But the ignorance of the statement that, okay, had it not been for slavery, that slavery took you from worshiping a tree to doing what? So what exactly did slavery do to you? What is slavery? Now, the notion is, they would say that slavery introduce them to Christianity. That's what they would say. That in other words, if it had not been for the evil, brutal institution of slavery, where you were treated as an animal, you would have been worshiping a tree. You were sold as a property. You was treated as property. You was treated as inhumane. But somehow that's better than worshiping a tree free, running around naked. Now I'm being facetious, but that's the ideology that she's pushing. In other words, by the way, you don't see that in Africa too. If you go to Africa, you're not going to see people running around with trees, worshiping trees. My point is, well, which is best? Which existence is best? The idea that the Christian God used the slavery as an instrument of good for your life is asinine. No. Now, God in his... let me also say this before I move on. Christianity reached the continent of Africa way before it reached America. Centuries before it reached America. So again, the ignorance when people say things, and I'm speaking to the ideology here because again, the statement that I thank God for slavery was made 15 years ago. So she was thinking this 15 years ago, way before Florida just tried to adapt the, blacks benefit from slavery. In other words, that goes a lot deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that. So as a Christian pastor, she should know better. As a Christian pastor, now her kind of pastorate is questionable anyway. Her kind of ministry is shrouded with controversy. As I said, she's not living her Christian life. She's not being the example that she should, that God tells her to be as a pastor. And I acknowledge, I'm not going to get into the debate whether or not if you think a woman should pastor or not. My point is, she's not living according to the standard of Christianity anyway, to the standard of what a pastor should be. So what I am saying is that in all of this ideology, you instead of focusing on the goodness of God, you're focusing on an evil institution, an evil way of life, the crack house, the hard knock life, okay, the streets. That's what you're giving the glory to instead of no. How about focusing on Jesus? Because see, I didn't experience any of those things. I didn't. I wasn't raised in the streets, the hard knock life of the streets, drugs and gangs and crime. My experience was not impressive, right? I can't kind of stack up to that. I had a very good upbringing, but I was still sinful and God still had mercy on me and God still saved me. And so where we converge at is that both of us are benefits of God's love and mercy and grace. That's what we both should be thanking God for. I can't say, well, because I did not do drugs, I wasn't beat up, I wasn't in gangs, I wasn't in shooting, that, I don't have a good testimony. I'm not saying she's saying that about me, but she's saying that she's thanking God for slavery. She's thanking God for the crack house because if she didn't have those experiences, God couldn't use her. That's just simply not true. The Apostle Paul didn't have those kinds of experiences. The Apostle Paul grew up in an extremely religious background. And by the way, God didn't use that. That wasn't the criteria that God saved Paul. His Judaism, his experience in Judaism, because God gave him the revelation that he wanted Paul to have and sent him to the Gentiles. Let's give the right glory to God, not focus on the evil systems. All right, guys, that's my perspective. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome.